Well, I can definitely say that you guys have done your part on delivering the Q, so hopefully I will do my part on delivering the A to make a good episode. Hey guys, welcome back to Q&A with Animat, and so far, I have gotten so many amazing questions for you guys where, at this point, it was a little bit difficult to try to go and find 10 of the best questions that I could find in order to make a really solid episode of this. But I did manage to ultimately go and select the 10 big questions for this one, so I think we are going to have a blast, and we might learn about a few things in this particular episode. So with all that said, let's go ahead and start things off with our first question, which is going to be from Andrew Cutter from YouTube. And Andrew asks me, where did the phrase "what the fridge" come from? Well, honestly, that's going to be something that you will learn a little bit about me because, believe it or not, growing up, I was raised in a family where we do look down upon swearing, where we're not necessarily like a very strict family. We're not like some highly conservative, strictly Christian family or anything like that. It's just that one thing in particular that is pretty taboo, and that is swearing. And even if we were caught swearing, we would definitely get punished, or like it would honestly be very looked down upon within our family. So that is the one major rule when growing up. And there are some ways that people would go and try to work around that, or they would try to restrict themselves as much as possible, or at least when they are with the whole family together. In my case, I would go swear, but in a more family-friendly way per se, where instead of using the legitimate swear words, I would go and replace them. And I think it was during my teen years where I actually did come up with "what the fridge." And that was actually something that I would commonly use within my family or in public or just whatever. Instead of actually using the real words of WTF, I would just go, "what the fridge." And since then, it did kind of stick, and it almost became a bit of my catchphrase per se, even to the point where I start to notice even some of my family members actually do use it casually, funny enough. And since then, I would go and actually use it on my YouTube channel, and it just kind of became its own thing from there. So ultimately, it's just my own way of restricting myself from actually swearing. Now, before anyone would go and ask more questions about my viewpoints on swearing, personally, I really don't care. Even within my family nowadays, we're a lot less restrictive when it actually comes to swearing because we're all adults now, so it's not necessarily as taboo as it is before, but we still have a bit of that mentality where it is kind of like a very rare occasion when we would legitimately swear. And in the case of myself, I really don't care whenever I would hear someone swear. So like honestly, like if I would watch like a swear-filled video, then honestly, I'm cool with it. I mean, like, I love the Angry Video Game Nerd, so I think that really does say something that I'm pretty okay with swearing in general. But the main thing is that the only person who I am restrictive when it comes to swearing is just myself. So that's essentially why I came up with "what the fridge." And I mean, like, honestly, instead of using the actual swear words, it is kind of fun, and it helps with my creativity. So, honestly, it helps emphasize a bit of my personality. So, honestly, "what the fridge" was something that did kind of stick. So, and it is something that to this day that I actually do use in my personal life, that I actually do commonly use. It's not just a thing I say for videos and stuff like that. Sometimes I do legitimately throw out a "what the fridge" or two. So hopefully that will go and answer that question on the origins of "what the fridge," and might say a little bit more about me and how I even make my videos, how they end up becoming a little bit more family friendly than some of the others. Alright, so now that I answered that question, let's go and jump onto our next one, which will be from Angel Barbosa, again from YouTube. And Angel asks me, what is your favorite French animated film? The French animated film. Celebrated everywhere for its excellence. There is an animated film that I do like, made by Paul Masson. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. But for real though, there have been a few French animated films that I do enjoy, but the ones that really do stand out for me in particular, like I know a lot of people will have their favorites. I know some of them will definitely immediately say something like Ernest and Celestine, but if I would have to go and point out my absolute favorites when it comes to French animated films, I would definitely say the works of Sylvain Chomet. In fact, I would even go as far and say that Sylvain Chomet is my favorite French animator, especially with the works that he has done with The Triplets of Belleville and The Illusionist, the 2010 animated movie, of course. And those films are definitely well crafted. Especially when it comes to his animation, they are surprisingly smooth. They have this very detailed and distinct style to them that it kind of looks like, it almost looks like poster art coming to life in a sense, where you would see this old, like this turn of the century art style, but actually fully brought to life in some of the smoothest hand drawn that you could ever find. And it's not just with those movies as well. And on top of that, like in terms of the writing and stuff like that, like they definitely are movies that you would not find in the mainstream. They definitely are unique feature films that do bring their own strong emotions, and the execution of it are unique and sometimes a lot of fun, or they can be very emotional, like in the case of The Illusionist. But it's not necessarily just his movies that I really do admire. I also like a lot of his other animation stuff that he has done as well. Like there's this one music video that was really awesome. It was for a French singer, and from there he would go and animate this entire commentary on how everybody is pretty much hooked on social media, more particularly on Twitter, and how the whole world has pretty much succumbed to like this world that is dominated by social media, represented by these blue birds. But another one, and something that you might be familiar with in terms of Sylvain Chomet, is that he actually did a Simpsons couch gag. There was at one point that it's a little more French themed and very well animated as well. That's another one that is really worth pointing out. That's also really good. So I definitely do love the works of Sylvain Chomet. But another one that I would like to point out, it's a movie that I really love, but it is more partly French because it's not entirely French that the film was made. It is The Red Turtle, which is a recent feature, but the reason why I say that it's partly French is because while there are some French elements that were actually crafted in there, it is actually partly made at the same time by Studio Ghibli. While not officially a Studio Ghibli film, they did help out in order to create this movie. Like Toshio Suzuki, for example, was one of the main producers of this, and it's such a beautiful feature. I'm just gonna say right now that if you guys have not seen it, please do so. It is a beautiful animated film that you cannot find anywhere else. So hopefully that will answer that question, that it's mainly the works of Sylvain Chomet, but I also like to throw in The Red Turtle. Okay, now for our next question, I'm just going to give you out a little bit of a warning that this could be a little bit of a controversial question to go and answer. But I figured, why the fridge not? I'll go and take a shot at it. And it's going to be from Benjamin Fenty from Facebook. And Benjamin asks me, is redemption possible for John Lasseter? Well, I think first and foremost, I could definitely say not right now, because the subject and the topic of sexual harassment, it is still pretty hot. It is still pretty big and popular, and it's something that, like, of course, it's one of the main issues that people really do look down upon, that now people who have been sexually harassed are a lot more open to discuss about this and to call out the people who have been taking advantage of them. So I wouldn't say that John Lasseter is gonna suddenly turn over a new leaf and suddenly people will love him like we used to, like, many years ago. I don't think that's gonna be the case. However, I will say that in the case of John Lasseter specifically, it is actually not impossible for him to actually find redemption. Now, it is definitely going to be extremely hard for people to, to trust him again, like his days at Disney and Pixar. But the reason why I do say that it is not impossible is that more than most or even any other person who got hit with the hashtag #MeToo movement, John Lasseter is taking the right steps in order to find any form of redemption. Now, I know some people might say that it is kind of weird to say that because he hasn't done anything, or he hasn't done really much that would go and be spread all over the news, but that's actually the thing. He has done nothing. He's not forcing himself back into the spotlight or try to be relevant again, you know? He's not trying to be like either Kevin Spacey or Louis C.K., where they're trying to force themselves back into popularity and try to, be back into doing all these things like they used to, like acting or stand-up, and try to be more edgy at the same time, making the cancellation of their careers kind of like their brand in a sense. Like, John Lasseter is not doing that. He's not exploiting his cancellation, or he's not gonna go out and try to antagonize his accusers or try to antagonize woke culture, or even go after his accusers with like some kind of hopeless lawsuit that would end up like even worse for him. He's not doing any of that. He's keeping himself low, and he's keeping himself quiet and reserved. That, like, you haven't heard any news from John Lasseter in a long time. Like, the only major instance was when he got back into being the head of animation in Skydance, where from there, like, he managed to get back in just after literally a few days after he was let go from Disney. Now, yeah, that was kind of a dumb moment, which maybe John shouldn't have done, but still, ever since then, we haven't really heard anything directly about John Lasseter. Now, from there, it really is kind of an instance that no news is good news, and I just want to clarify, I don't work at Skydance Animation, I don't know what's fully going on in there, but at least hearing nothing about him is definitely better than hearing something about him, especially after that he had all these allegations and all these accusations, like pretty much crumbling his reputation and his career, where now people do view him as a bit of a, kind of a creepy guy. Like, it is true that technically the stuff that he has done is not as bad as some of the others. It's not as bad as like Harvey Weinstein or John Kricfalusi, but still, they are things that you should not do. These are things that are still looked down upon, and like, yeah, it does make John Lasseter look like a creepy guy. But with that said and done, in terms of redemption, I don't think John Lasseter is going to find any of that, not for another few years, but I'm going to say at the pace that he is going, it is not impossible for him to find redemption or, get back into becoming a positive role model for the public. Now, I don't know if in the future I could be wrong and maybe things are going to be worse for John. And like, in terms of the road of redemption after like going through all this, again, it is still going to be massively difficult, but that's why I say it's not impossible. The fact that he is doing better way more than others by doing nothing and keeping himself low and quiet and stepping away from the spotlight, at least he does have a better chance than most others. Like, he has a better chance than Harvey Weinstein or Kevin Spacey or Louis C.K. Alright, so now that I did go and cover that one, let us now go on to our next question, and we're gonna light things up a bit, where I got this question from Twitter by Louis Rodrigo Urdaneta. And by the way, I do apologize if I screwed up your name there. But anyways, let's go and answer Louis' question. Or Louis, or Louis, either or. Anyways, I remember watching a video of Armchair Imagineering that Doggins said that Disney and Universal doesn't usually build a lot of attractions based on TV shows as much as ones with movies. Why do you think that's the case? Well, honestly, that is a pretty tough question to go and answer, and it did require me to think about this a lot. This is one of the few questions on this episode that I thought the most to have like a real legitimate answer to it than some of the others. Like, a few of the questions, like, they're very good and like I know how to answer it, but this one, you know, I like the challenge of it, so that's why I did take it. And honestly, I did think about this a little bit, and honestly, I would say that it has to do with the relevancy of TV shows, because when it comes to the relevancy of movies and TV shows, like, these are two entirely different things. Like, in terms of movies, they will happen, and then suddenly the impact will go and follow, and you never know if the impact could really go on for like a long time, which does give amusement parks like Universal and Disney more room in order to create attractions, because even if it is like another 10 or 20 years, if the movie has made a very positive impact, then people will still love to go and ride it and stuff like that. Whereas TV shows, those ones, their relevancy is only on the time when they're on television. It's actually extremely, extremely rare for a TV show to actually have a major legacy where after it aired, like after the show is done, where it would have a very strong legacy where people can look back and like, you know, still feel a positive feeling towards that thing. Like, one of the very rare TV shows that did turn into a theme park, or at least in one of the major theme parks like Universal, is The Simpsons. Now, The Simpsons is a show that's still going on today. It's been on for about 30 years right now, and people still love watching the series. And even if the show would suddenly be canceled right now, it still has an extremely strong legacy, where having a section at Universal that's entirely based on Springfield, it's a great idea. People want to go and visit the world of The Simpsons and want to go into the Simpsons ride and have fun with that. So there is all that to go and consider. You know, there is that very rare exception that a show would be so big and so famous that even after it finished airing, that it could still have that relevancy and still have that legacy. That the legacy is so strong that it carries the relevancy with it. But again, that's a very rare case. Usually, in terms of relevancy of a TV show, it's only when it's on the air, and then afterwards, that's pretty much it. Where imagine if there is a show that did get popular a bit when it was on, and then suddenly it got canceled. But then there's like one section of Disney or Universal where the ride is still there. It still exists. And it is kind of awkward to see it there because the show is no longer relevant anymore. The show is no longer there. So at that point, like, not many people would be interested to go into those rides as much as one that is based on a movie. So from there, it would be a little bit more expensive for the company to go and continuously update it. Now, an example that I can find is, imagine, for example, if they would go and make a ride based on Gravity Falls. Now, that is definitely a popular show, especially when it was on the air, but the problem is, it's no longer on the air anymore. So it is kind of awkward to see a show that is on there that is canceled, and the general public is not going to be interested to go and ride that as much as, like, like some of the other attractions at Disney. So from there, Disney would go and have to continuously update it in order to keep it as relevant as possible. So they would have to change up the theme into an Owl House ride. And then once that show is going to be canceled, they'll have to update it again and again and again. Now, I know there are going to be some examples where there are some shows that have been gone for so long, but the ride is still there. Like, I think Disney, like at Disneyland, there is still like some Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers ride that is still up and going. But yeah, there are those exceptions, but that's essentially the idea why you would have why there are very few rides based on based on TV shows than movies. It's mainly because of the relevancy. And in terms of the relevancy of TV shows, they are an entirely different breed compared to movies. I know it's a little bit complex, but hopefully that will go and answer your question. Alright, so the next question that I do have here is going to be coming from Hunter O'Laughlin on Facebook. And Hunter asks me, if the Criterion Collection went back to distributing animated films like they did in the mid-2010s, what animated films would you like to see released as part of the collection? You know, honestly, to this day, I still go and check every month to see what are the new additions in the Criterion Collection, in the hopes that maybe one day they will get back to redistributing animated films. Like, I still go and check on it and keep going, release an animated film, you cowards! But in all seriousness, there are a few that I can think of that I would love to see added onto the collection. There are some that I would like to see that really does highlight one specific animator in particular, something like Allegro Non Troppo or The King and the Mockingbird, where they would go and release their movies, but they would also have a lot of bonus features that would highlight the artists themselves in particular. That would definitely be nice. Another one, and this is actually just one that really did pop up in my head, that would seem like a great addition, is any of the works of Ralph Bakshi. Rather it be something like Fritz the Cat or Heavy Traffic or Coonskin, I would love to see those added to the Criterion Collection because with the kind of films that Criterion would go and distribute, the works of Ralph Bakshi seems like something that would go right up to their alley. So I would definitely add something from Ralph Bakshi. But one thing that I will say that I think is going to be the obvious, if there is one animated film that has the strongest chance to be next in line for the Criterion Collection more than anyone else, I would definitely have to say Isle of Dogs. And it's not because it is this major avant-garde animated film, but more because it's Wes Anderson. And if you know the Criterion Collection, you know it loves Wes Anderson. In fact, that's kind of the reason why they distributed Fantastic Mr. Fox. It's not because it's an animated film, but because it's a Wes Anderson film. And they keep adding in the Wes Anderson films again and again and again. In fact, I think not too long ago, they added the Grand Budapest Hotel. So it wouldn't surprise me if at one point they will add Isle of Dogs. But I will say this though, if there is one that, like for me, would be a dream addition to the Criterion Collection, I highly doubt this would happen, mainly because of like copyright stuff and like complications of collaboration. But honestly, if there would be one I would love to see added, I want to see Disney make a collaboration with Criterion to add Fantasia into it. Maybe they could do like a combination, add a combo, make it like their last Blu-ray of Fantasia, where they would combine it with Fantasia 2000 and stuff like that. But that would be one I would love to see added, especially when they would have like this massive treasure trove of bonus features. Like really make it one where it cannot be just one Blu-ray, like have several Blu-rays released with it. So that would be my dream edition for the Criterion. I don't know if it's gonna happen, mainly because of copyright reasons with Disney, and Disney would rather go and distribute their own things. And I mean, when you do look into the Criterion Collection, I don't think they do have a single Disney film. Maybe I'm wrong, you can correct me if that's the case, but that would definitely be one I would love to see added. Now, my next question is going to be on Twitter from Joker Huskton Gamer. And Joker asks me, what do you consider a so bad it's good film? Well, you know, the funny thing is that it's hard for me to actually find one that would be an animated film that's like so bad it's good. I might really need to actually think about that and maybe watch a few more really bad animated films, which honestly I'm not that excited for. I don't really want to do that. But for real though, there have been a few general ones that I do enjoy that are like so bad it's good. I mean, like a lot of them are more the typical ones, stuff like The Room or Troll 2, or a recent one that I really did enjoy is technically the Banana Splits movie. That could definitely be enjoyed as like a stupid so bad it's good movie. But there is one, however, that really does stand out that I would say so far, it's definitely one of my favorites, or if not my favorite so bad it's good movie. I've probably talked about this before, but I think it needs to be repeated here. I love the 2015 Pan movie. Now, if you guys don't know, this was Warner Brothers' attempt to go and copy or try to cash in on the success of the Disney live-action remakes back in 2015 with this big budget origin story of Peter Pan. But it's one of those movies where everything went wrong, but it went so wrong that it kind of became a new right, where they really messed up so bad where it's unintentionally so entertaining, because this is a movie that's just so filled with surprises. It is absolutely stupid at every step of the way with what they wanted to try to do. Of course, it was a massive box office bomb. It was a flop with critics and audiences, but when I first saw it, it was just purely magical. Like, all the terrible things and all the terrible ideas and all the ways they would try to create Neverland, it's just hilariously bad. If you're the kind of person that loves to watch so bad it's good movies, I highly recommend Pan. Like, it's one of those that's so bad that even to this day, I actually do quote some of the things from the movie. So I'm going to leave it to you to go and check it out. That's definitely one movie that, like, honestly would be like a dream thing if someone on Patreon would go and request me to do. I would definitely have a blast doing a review of that thing, but just watch it, trust me. You will not be disappointed on some of the goofy awfulness that they have in store. It's a film where you gotta expect the unexpected. Okay, so the next question that I do have here is going to be from Alfredo Orellana. And Alfredo asked me, which is on YouTube, by the way, what's your favorite YouTuber? Speaking of YouTube, actually. Well, honestly, I do have several that I do love to watch, but I'm only going to be listing a few here. Like, for example, there are some gamers that I do like to watch, like Game Grumps or Markiplier, for example. But oddly enough, as time would move on, I do seem to enjoy more of their miscellaneous content. Not necessarily them playing games, but when they would go and do other stuff. Especially like when they have made like a separate channel dedicated to some of the miscellaneous stuff. Like, yeah, I do watch some Game Grumps, but I actually do prefer watching more some of the Grumps, especially like with the 10-minute Power Hour. Or for example, with Markiplier, I do like to watch some of the gameplays of Markiplier and stuff like that, but I actually do prefer watching stuff like Markiplier Makes or Unis Honest, where he would join with when he would join with Ethan of Cranky Gameplays. And also there are other ones that I do enjoy as well, like theme park YouTubers as well. Like, suddenly in recent years, they really got massively popular. Especially, of course, I love watching Defunct Land, definitely one of my faves. I like watching stuff like Yesterworld. I also like watching some of the underrated ones, I would say, as well. The ones who have done these videos even before these guys would come in. People like Tony Goldmark, Charlie, who I think he switched his name. Like, he used to be Spazmaster, but now he is, I guess he calls himself Theme Snark now. Also Doggins, in which was already mentioned in this video, and among a few others. So those are definitely ones I do like to watch. But there is one that I will say I need to give a shout out that I really like watching in terms of like movie reviews and stuff like that. I really do enjoy the content of Double Toasted. I was a fan of Corey Coleman's content ever since the days of Spill.com, but now with Double Toasted, I definitely do watch their movie reviews. They're still a lot of fun, and I also like to see like some of the miscellaneous topics that they like to get into. Like, they really do get pretty insightful. Like, there are some things that I like to learn and love to hear like a second opinion on, but honestly, it's just it's one of those contents that I like to listen to because you know, it's kind of like hanging out with I guess the best way to describe it is one of those me and the boys type of videos where it's not necessarily something that's like really grandiose in terms of like YouTube videos or content creating and stuff like that. It's just like chilling out with a bunch of cool dudes, just like having fun talking about movies and other miscellaneous topics. So Double Toasted is definitely one I recommend to watch. Alright, now I know there are definitely a lot more that I would love to add into, like the Angry Video Game Nerd and stuff like that, but well, those are just a few examples that I just want to bring in terms of like the content that I do like to watch. But anyways, let's get back into our next question here, and for this one, it will be from Harold 007333, and Harold asks me, have you ever changed your mind about a movie that you have reviewed in more than 10 years of opening your channel? For example, a 9 out of 10 to 8 out of 10, or 6 out of 10 to 7 out of 10. Well, I honestly, I need to start things off by saying that, honestly, it's very common and it's very human for someone to go and eventually change their opinion or change their mind about something like a movie, where they might not like it at first, but then they grew into it, or they once liked it and then they didn't really like it all that much. Even for someone like me who has done this for 10 years, there have been things that I've already reviewed, but I have slightly changed my mind. Now, these moments don't happen necessarily all the time, but I do have a few that do stand out where I have changed my opinion just a little bit. Like, one example is the first How to Train Your Dragon movie, where before I gave it a 7 out of 10, but it wasn't that long ago I did rewatch the movie for the sake of like prepping myself up for, I believe was How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, and I will say I did like it a lot more than I did the first time around. Now, I still consider it as the weakest of the How to Train Your Dragon movies, especially when the writing isn't necessarily all that good and a little predictable and a bit cliched filled at the same time. And especially, crap, what's his name again? His name, I don't know why suddenly, but his name escapes me. The voice of Hiccup. Eventually it will come back to me. Actually, you know what, screw this. I'm gonna go and I have the DVD. I have one of the DVDs. Like, I got the Blu-ray of The Hidden World. I just need to double check if it does mention. Oh crap, it doesn't mention. Help me. Oh no, wait, hold on. Chris Sanders. No. Oh crap, it doesn't say. Crap, who's the name?
A few moments later.
Jay Baruchel! Okay, got it. Okay, anyways, getting back to what I was talking about. Yeah, and one of my problems as well with the movie is the fact that, like, I didn't, like, Jay Baruchel's performance is pretty annoying, but one thing that I highly do admire of the first movie, or, like, a few of the things, actually, it has some of the best world building and some of the best animation that DreamWorks has ever produced. And especially with the concept of dragons and stuff like that, I think it really is strong, and I think it does provide a pretty powerful movie where it does stand well on its own. Not necessarily as well as like The Hidden World or especially the second movie, but still pretty good. Like, I would bump my rating up to like an 8 out of 10 or something. But then there is also one film that I would say that I have significantly changed my opinion, where now I loved it, and that would be Fantastic Mr. Fox. Now, at first, when I did review it before, I think I gave it like an 8 out of 10. It was like one of my first reviews, and I didn't necessarily fully understand it at first, mainly because I wasn't necessarily all that familiar with the works of Wes Anderson, but nowadays, as I grew older and have watched a lot more movies, now I get the style of Wes Anderson. I do get what he's doing, and I really do like him as a filmmaker. And now that I do have that comprehension of his filmmaking, and a little bit more familiar as well with Fantastic Mr. Fox as a book and a story in general, I absolutely loved it. Like, that definitely is one that I would bump up my rating to either like a 9 or a 10 out of 10. Definitely, it is now one of my favorite stop-motion animated features, hands down. But not only that, though, I would definitely say that there have been a few other movies that I have yet to rewatch again, but I want to give it a second chance to see if my opinions have changed. Like, one in particular I really want to see if my opinion has changed is definitely My Neighbor Totoro. That is one where I do want to double check, because even I'll have to admit that my review and my first impressions of it were pretty messy, but nowadays I am a lot older, and again, I've seen a lot more movies, and now I am so much more familiar with Studio Ghibli, where I need to rewatch it again to have like a second impression of how it is. That, and also to watch it in like the best form possible, to see it Japanese sub. So I want to see it in the best way possible, and I do want to give it a second chance, because a lot of people are still going around saying that it is one of the greatest animated films out there. So that's definitely a movie I want to give a second chance to. Funny enough, another one that I do want to see again to see how my opinion has changed would have to be Mars Needs Moms, because that's one movie where I do have a bit of the opposite feeling, where I gave it a bit of I remember I think I gave it like a 5 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 or something on my review, and I look back and I feel like maybe I was a little too generous. With that kind of film and that kind of reputation, I don't know if I would go that high. Like, that seems like the kind of movie that would earn the Animat seal of garbage, but I'm not 100% sure. So that's another one that I would consider. But again, there's not a whole lot that I would say that my opinion has fully changed in terms of like reviewing them and then continuing on afterwards. But those are some of the main ones that I do want to go and highlight. Now, our next question, it will be a little bit similar to the first one that I answered, and this will be from Olga Mandagi. And Olga asks me, how do you first get your name Electric Dragon 505 and Animat? Well, I will say in terms of Electric Dragon 505, that one is not necessarily as epic of a story or insightful of a story. It's just because I find these things to be cool when I was building these things. Like, even for my production company, Electric Dragon Productions, honestly, like, the reason why I went with these combinations of words and numbers is just, I thought they were cool. I thought electric is like a cool superpower, and I like dragons, and the number 505 looks cool, so I decided to just combine those elements together and just boom, Electric Dragon 505, and since then, it's still stuck. And I still have a bit of that same mindset as well. I think 505 is a cool number. I think dragons are cool. Electric is a cool power, so yeah, basically it's just simple as that. And as for the name Animat, that one actually does have a little bit more of a story, I will say right now. And the thing of Animat is that I remember way back when I was starting making videos, like sometime in 2010, when I've already done a few on my YouTube channel and would go and continue from there, where in terms of the name Animat, I thought it up mainly because back then I was really I was really into like the reviewers of that guy with the glasses.com, and I realized how everyone in there had all these different names to associate themselves with, you know, kind of like an internet persona or an internet name per se, you know, stuff like Linkara or Spoonie or Angry Joe or Film Brain or Nostalgia Critic or Mars Girl or Nostalgia Chick or whatever. Like, you got so many of these different examples that I feel like, you know what, if I want to, like, if I fully want to enter into this, then I should have a name of my own, because like that's kind of like one of the requirements that you kind of had to do at the time when entering into this reviewing world. So I did try to think about it, and then one day suddenly there was this little spark in my brain where I realized that in the word animation, you literally cannot spell it without my name, or that my name literally is in the word animation, where right in the center of it is Matt, M-A-T. So I decided, why not go and try to make like a little bit similar to the name, like combine Matt with animation or something, and I decided to take away the last three letters, I-O-N, and just have it be Animat, where you say it like animation, but you end it off in the same way you would say Matt. So that was pretty much the story of that. Like the name Animat did have a little bit of a creative process, but Electric Dragon 505, that's still a bit of an easy name to think of, because it's like, it's a combo of things that I like. And finally, we are gonna cap this off with our final question, and I decided why not go and end this one with a bit of a fun one. And this is gonna be from K McSpadden, and K asks me on Twitter, if you were a gym leader / Elite Four, what type would you use, and what Pokemon do you want on that team? Honestly, that is actually a pretty good question, and as a Pokemon fan, honestly, it wasn't necessarily all that hard to think about, considering in the last question, I've already talked about what kind of superpowers I think are pretty cool. So honestly, hands down, I would say electric type, like easily just be like either an electric type gym leader or an electric type Elite Four. And in terms of the electric type Pokemon that I would use, there are a few that I would have in mind. Like, one that I will say is a staple no matter what. I don't care what people think, but one Pokemon that I must have in my team is Pikachu. I must have Pikachu in my team. He's my favorite Pokemon. I know it sounds a bit generic, or it sounds a bit like a casual person would say, but I adore Pikachu, so I must have Pikachu in my team. I'm thinking maybe to also go and include Electivire as well, like as like the more powerful version of Electabuzz and stuff like that, and considering like he's kind of like this big brooding electric type Pokemon, so definitely a cool addition there. But also, if I would go and think of also like a dragon type as well, considering Electric Dragon in my company name and also the name of my YouTube channel, then honestly, they really are extremely rare. There is that one legendary type Pokemon, but just recently with Sword and Shield, it did give me an option with, I believe it's Dracozolt, where it is an electric dragon type Pokemon. The one that has like this little yellow body but has such a massive thick booty. So I think I'll also have to include that one as well. So those are my main three, but also, you know what? I think from there, I'll also leave it to you guys. That should be, you know, that could actually be a great way to go and conclude this. I'll also ask you guys, which Pokemon type do you think would suit me best if I were to be like a gym leader or as a member of the Elite Four? And also, which Pokemons would you like me to have? Like, considering for my electric types, I already add in Pikachu, Electivire, and Dracozolt. What else would you want to go and add for me? Just let me know in the comments, or just message me what you think I should have. And with all that said, that should go and conclude this fun-filled episode of Animat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this, and hopefully you had a lot of fun. And also, I just want to give a massive thanks to everyone who has asked me a question. And also, I would like to say, if you guys would like to ask a question that would one day hopefully appear in Q&A with Animat, then don't hesitate to ask. You can ask me wherever, whether it be on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, or wherever you can find me on the internet. So with all that said and done, I would like to say thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see you later, dudes!